Hi, welcome to Party Food Hero. I'm Aaron. Today we're going to be making amazing tacos. We're going to be making the tacos you've been seeing all over Instagram, all over social media, all over the place. We're going to make the tacos that you dunk into that delicious sauce. They are called birria tacos. I'm probably not saying that correctly, but that's the type of taco that they are. They're delicious. We tried a few different recipes that we found online. The one we liked the most was actually by Claudia Regalado, something like that. I'll link her YouTube page in the description below. Let's give a shout out to her. Yeah, they're delicious. They're not super easy to make. They're a little difficult. There's a lot of ingredients, but the effort of making it is totally worth it. They're amazing. They're just as good as they look in the videos you see and pictures you see all over social media. So let's go check it out. Okay, here's a beautiful sweeping shot of all the ingredients you're going to need. Well, almost all of them. I am not going to name them all because it's a lot and you're not going to remember them anyways. I'm going to conveniently put them on my website so you don't have to come rewatch this video 800 times trying to remember what is in this recipe. You are going to take your chuck roast and cut it up into thirds or fourths. Kind of just depends how big your chuck roast is and how big your pot is. I think even after I cut this up, I cut them a little bit smaller just so they would fit better into my pot. So you're going to be boiling them for several hours. You don't have to really worry about them being uniformly the exact same size. So yeah, as you can tell, I think one of them actually fell apart when I was picking it up. So that's why there's that tiny piece there. You obviously don't want it that big of a difference, but I'll tell you what, it still came out delicious. So you're going to put your meat, kind of just line it up in there, and then you're going to grab yourself that onion, and then you're going to add in your garlic, which I believe for this part is like 7. And you can count it. I'm not going to, but I think that was 7. You don't use all of the garlic, just I think 7 cloves. And then you put in your bay leaf, and then you are going to put enough water in so it just submerges all the meat. Now, you might get a little floaty meat here and there, but as long as the majority of it is covered in water, you're going to be okay. As it's boiling, you can kind of shift the meat around and make sure everything's getting cooked evenly, but just as long as you get it lined up to the top of the meat with water, you're good to go. Then you're gonna put this on medium-high heat or high heat. You want this to boil for mine took about 2.5 hours to do, so just keep an eye on it, about 2.5 hours, or until the meat just falls apart. And so this is what it's gonna look like. You're gonna have it boiling real well, and that's what boiling chuck roast looks like with onions and garlic and 2 bay leaves. But yeah, so I just would kind of poke the meat around every once in a while just to make sure it was all getting cooked evenly. So this is the most labor-intensive part of this recipe. You are going to remove the stems and as many of the seeds from these chilies as possible. And that's all you do, is rip the stem off, kind of open it up, and take out the seeds. And the reason this takes so long is because there's like 500 chilies that you have to put in it. But that is what makes this recipe so good. That's what makes these tacos so amazing and the meat so flavorful. So it's worth it. Just throw on a TV show or a movie or have some music on in the background while you're doing it. Or better yet, get somebody else to do it for you. But it's not that crazy. That's all you do. Take off the stem, open it up, take out the chilies. And I think there's like 30 chilies that you have to do that for. So that's why it takes so long, but that's all you got to do. I will not make you watch me do it because it took a long time. And then when you are done de-seeding them and taking off the stems, you're going to rinse them off in some cold water, rinse them off a couple of times, and then you're going to put them in a pot like this. Just put enough water to cover them, and then you're going to boil them. And probably about on medium-high heat. And then you're going to boil them for about 20 to 30 minutes or until they get nice and soft. Now you're going to take a cinnamon stick, and then you want about 1 inch which, you know, doesn't have to be exact. Then use a not sharp knife to cut it with, and then you can get nice pieces of a cinnamon stick. And then you want a chunk of ginger, probably about an inch as well, and you want to peel that ginger, which I didn't show me doing, but that's what I did. You don't have to split this up like I'm doing it. I'm just doing it so it's kind of easier on my blender, which it would have been fine anyways, but I did it. So if you want to kind of split up your ginger like that, you can. If not, not a big deal. When your chilies are done cooking and they're soft, you're going to take them out, drain them, and let them sit out for about 20 minutes to cool off. And then once they're cooled off, you're going to add them to your blender. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why these birria tacos are so amazing. I mean, look at all this. You got the amount of flavor that's in this is insane. I'm almost wondering if you add that the Mexican chocolate, if this turns into a mole. I'd have to look at the mole recipes, but it's got to be somewhat similar. Maybe not. Whatever. Sorry. So that's again, this is why it's so good. We're using a bunch of different chilies. We have cinnamon, ginger, cloves. I mean, there's so many different things that are in here that as you put this all together and mix it all up, you just get this awesome smell from your blender that lets you know this is going to be delicious. So let's start adding everything in. Hopefully I can remember what it was. All right, you're gonna add, all right, that's the vinegar that you're adding in. Next, you're gonna put in your toasted sesame seeds. I just bought some that are already toasted, so I didn't have to toast them myself. Then you got your ginger and your cinnamon stick. Then you're gonna put in some bay leaves. Then your cloves. Then, oh no, that was the peppercorns. So your peppercorns and then some oregano. Then your whole cumin. And then we're going to add the rest of the garlic. And then we're done. Now we get to blend it all together. I almost forgot. You got to put a little bit of salt in there as well. Not a ton, but you do got to put a little bit of salt in there. As always, the recipe, the ingredients, everything will be in the description below and on my website, partyfoodhero.com. Although not required, it is extremely convenient if you have an excellent blender. Blendtec, Vitamix, those are the two that come to mind when I think of awesome blenders. The reason being is it completely blends all of this stuff together and you have a nice smooth consistency. If you don't have a blender that's awesome, that blends up really well, you'll just want to make sure that you use a strainer, like a fine strainer, to get out any of the chunks of anything that's left over. All right, now that your sauce is all blended and smooth, you're gonna come over and you're going to remove the onion. And then I try to find all the garlic to remove and I couldn't find it. Not a deal breaker if you can't find the garlic to remove. So I made sure I at least got the onion out of there, and then I found the bay leaves. You're supposed to take the bay leaves off out as well. I couldn't find them. I didn't want to spend a lot of time looking for them. I found them after I took the meat out later. So not super important. I mean, obviously you want to make sure you take at least the bay leaves out before you start serving this. But it's not critical that you take them out at this point. Just make sure, 100% make sure you take them out before you serve it. And now you're going to pour in that sauce right into the pot with the meat. I did wonder how much water you're supposed to put in, because I was kind of thinking that if you had way too, like a giant pot and a lot of water, this would dilute your sauce that you're making. I'll leave a description of the pot that I used and approximately about how much water I used. This recipe turned out great, but if for some reason you're using this massive pot with 10 gallons of water in it, and then you put this sauce in there, it's obviously going to dilute it so much that it won't be as delicious. So I'll put the exact size of that pot that I used and the approximate amount of water. That way I don't know. That's when I was making this recipe, it wasn't super clear. And so I was kind of worried about it, but I figured it out. And then you're going to have a little bit of water, or sorry, a little bit of the sauce left over. And so what I did is I just grabbed it and swished it around. You want to make sure you get as much of that sauce out as you can, because that sauce is just a trip to Flavor City. Other towns are copyrighted, so Flavor City is where it's going to take you to. And then after you get all your sauce in there, you're going to let it simmer on medium for about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or until your meat is tender and pulls apart easily. And while your meat is bathing in flavor, you are going to boil some tomatoes. And it's just as easy as it sounds. You put the tomatoes in water and you boil them. And once they look like that, which takes about 5 minutes, they're ready to come off, get blended, and then you blend it all up until it's nice and smooth. Blendtecs are awesome. Before you take all your meat out, just check and make sure that it's tender enough and that it pulls apart easily. If it doesn't, it's not a big deal. Just leave it in there for another, 5-10 minutes or until it does pull apart easily. I was happy with where this meat was at, so I took the rest of it out. This is also a good time to find those bay leaves you couldn't find previously. So that's what I was doing. I kept finding them and pulling them out. So once you see those bay leaves, pull them on out. You don't want them in there. Before you add in your blended up tomatoes, you're going to want to take about a cup of this sauce out and set it to the side. This is the sauce you're going to use to dip your tortillas in before you cook them. So cup and a half. Cup's fine. Do a cup and a half. I did a cup. I did a little over a cup. Between a cup and a cup and a half. Now you're going to take that tomato puree that you just blended all up and then add that in with the sauce. It's a lot easier when you're holding a baby to do this. Then you're just going to mix this all together and let it simmer for about 5-10 minutes on medium-low. And while that is simmering, you are going to want to take that meat that you took out and just start shredding it. Make sure it's cooled off enough to do this. It gets really hot. And what I like about using my hands as opposed to like forks or tongs or whatever is you can pull out any of the extra chunks of fat or anything that seems weird. You could feel it a lot better with your fingers while you're doing it. So that's what I did. I just went through anything that did not seem like it would be very pleasant to eat. I just removed, and then you're just going to go through this whole pile and you're just going to shred it all up. And you get a nice, pretty pile of meat when you're done. There you have it. Look at that. Big old pretty pile of meat. And you definitely want to sneak a few pieces out of there and eat it because it's moist and delicious. And then just knowing how good this meat is before you have done anything else with it as far as making a taco, it gets you excited to make a taco because now you are starting to understand just how delicious this taco is going to be. And if you're anything like me, you start thinking about all the other stuff you could do this with. So be excited. And how can you make this meat even more flavorful? You add it back in to the sauce that you made. So yeah, you got yourself some delicious meat that you're going to leave sitting, kind of stewing in there for another 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes, as you get kind of the other taco ingredients ready to begin making. And once you have all the meat in the pot, you stir it all together. And like I said, you let it simmer there another 5-10 minutes. You got yourself a good stew. I'm going to emphasize this again at the end of this video, but queso Oaxaca is the best cheese to use for quesadillas, especially in this recipe. You 100% want to use queso Oaxaca. It is so good. It's perfectly creamy. I can't believe I ever made quesadillas not using it. I'm glad I know about it now but it's worth it. It's easy to find. You can find it at almost any grocery store. Just trust me. Go use it. Let me know in the comments how much you love queso Oaxaca after you have tried it. Okay, so we're going to stop looking at this plate because now we're going to shred it. This is how you shred cheese. Okay, now for the moment of truth. So you're going to use a non-stick pan. You're going to add some olive oil. You're going to set this to medium high, probably closer to medium than high. So medium plus. And then we're going to start assembling these birria tacos. Once your pan is hot enough, you're going to take your corn tortilla, dip it in that amazing sauce you've been working so hard to make, throw it in the pan. Yeah, it's going to make a mess, but totally worth it. You're going to put it in the pan, and then you're going to let them cook on the first side for about, I would say probably about a minute, and then you're going to flip it over. And then once you flip them over, which you want to do so very carefully for two reasons. Obviously, there's a bunch of hot oil spraying onto your hand. And then also because those tortillas are very, very tender because you dip them in that delicious sauce. So now you're going to add your queso Oaxaca. And then you add on that meat. It's okay. It's going to be real juicy, so you might get some drips onto your stove. It's okay. It can be cleaned up later. Focus on the taco. And you don't want to overburden the taco. This is a very tender taco, so don't overload it. It'll break. Trust me. I did it the first 2 times and they broke. So don't put too much meat in there. And once you have that meat in there, you're going to let it cook for another, I don't know, about a minute. And then what I did is I will close it into a taco shape and then cook it on both sides. So you get a nice crispy exterior. There we go. Now, is this taco going to win awards for best looking taco? No, it's not. That taco goes to either a carne asada taco or the tacos al pastor, which al pastor is the best, so it goes to the al pastor taco. But we're not going for a beauty contest. We're going for a taste contest, which this one is pretty high up there for best tasting tacos. And once you've cooked them on both sides and you see that cheese just oozing out, that's the indicator it's time to pull them. And then it's time to eat them. And then it's time for my favorite part of the video. Look how juicy those are. My goodness. Delicious. All right, now for my favorite part of the video. I get to eat the tacos. Las birrias tacos. Or however you say it. I have a terrible gringo accent. Okay, so as you could tell, it was a little bit of a process to make these, but the end result definitely justifies all the effort that you put into making these. They're really good. I always do these videos later in the day or the next day. In this case, I just did it later in the day, so I've already tried these. I know they're amazing, but I am excited to have them again. That's how good they are. Now, what you want to do is after you make them, you want to put a little bit of lime and cilantro. And you want to put some onions in there. Some nice finely diced onions. Okay, here we go. You got to dip it in that delicious sauce. Those are so good. It goes tacos al pastor, and then these tacos for my favorite tacos. These have, I mean, you saw the chilies that we put in it. It just has such just layers and layers and layers of flavor that like I said, it's worth the effort to make these. It's kind of a pain, gets kind of frustrating, but the good thing about it too is there's a bunch of leftovers. So you can make more tacos the next day. You can make quesadillas. You can make whatever you want. Or you could just eat the meat itself just by itself is delicious. A little bit of rice and that would be amazing as well. The other key factor in this is that Oaxaca cheese. If you've never made a quesadilla with Oaxaca cheese, you've never made a good quesadilla. Well, as good of a quesadilla as you can. That Oaxaca cheese is, I don't know why it's not a bigger deal in the United States, because it's amazing. It's just the perfect quesadilla cheese, the perfect, just creamy, super flavorful. It's great. It's perfect. So don't skip on that. You can find that at most grocery stores. You can find the Oaxaca cheese. Yeah, you definitely have to use that. But then corn tortillas, they're just everything. It just goes together so well. It's delicious. My kids liked it, so you know it's a real hit if my kids like it. But yeah, there you go. Not crazy hard to make. Probably the more times you make it, the easier it gets. Just like anything you do, the more times you do it, it gets easier. So yeah, definitely make this. It's delicious. I would say it's difficult, but delicious. So if you learned something new, if you enjoyed the video, hit like, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell. Tell your friends about it, tell your family about it, tell your neighbors about it. And remember, be the party food hero. I am going to finish this right now.
Be the party food hero.
So good.